Blessed day to you, friends. By now, you could have heard about the Beatitudes countless times, and there are many ways to interpret them and even understand them. However, today, let's look at them from a different perspective so that we can get even more blessings from this passage from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, verses 1 to 12. For a start, let's ask ourselves if we want even more blessings in our life. And Jesus tells us all today through the Beatitudes that our attitude are connected to our blessings. Hence, when we refer to the Beatitudes, let's remember that they refer to the attitudes we need to follow and the person we need to become and be, just as Christ desired. Hence why the theme of this sharing is our be attitudes bring us blessings. And that's why today's gospel passage contains a most interesting list of 8 recommendations or principles which Jesus himself gives to each one of us. If Jesus asks anything from us, he knows we can definitely do it and achieve it. Of course, there will be challenges, but by God's grace, there will be divine grace and guidance and strength to become and be the better version of ourselves. Jesus knows all of us want to be blessed and stay blessed. And interestingly, the Beatitudes actually show why Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Each of the 8 principles in the Beatitudes are actual guidelines where Jesus shows the way and summarizes all the truth and reveals the pathway to new life. Jesus gives us a list of 8 principles to start a new chapter or continue rising to the next level in our faith life and spiritual journey. Firstly, let's ask ourselves why 8 principles and not the usual 7 or 10 or any other number. Take note, the figure 8 is always symbolic of new beginnings, a resurrection, and a regeneration throughout the Bible. Whenever you see the figure 8 in the Bible, it will always be a call to leave the past behind and start a fresh new chapter in our life and relationship with the Trinity. You will see it in the Old Testament, in Genesis chapter 17, verse 12, about circumcision being done on the 8th day. You'll also see other references to the number 8 in Leviticus chapter 15, verses 13 to 14, and in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 36. Check out Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 18, and as well as Ezekiel chapter 43, verse 27, just to quote a few. In the New Testament, you'll also see it in Luke chapter 2, verse 21, where even Jesus goes to the temple on the 8th day to be presented. Also check out 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 20, where it's mentioned that there were 8 people who came out of Noah's ark when God started a whole new chapter in creation. The conversion of the Apostle Thomas was also on the 8th day after Jesus' resurrection. Now let's go into the 8 principles and guidelines given in the Beatitudes and connect it to our daily life. The first is, blessed are the poor in spirit. Have you ever wondered what this term poor in spirit is all about? While it can be interpreted many ways, today let's look at it as our humanity versus God's divinity. We first must humbly admit that we are human and have limitations. That human admission is the beginning of our awareness of our need for God's grace and guidance and blessings. When we admit our limitations and let go of our ego and pride and realize that even our greatest wealth and riches are nothing compared to the priceless richness and value of each breath and each blessing and each miracle and healing that money or anything earthly can ever buy. Then and only then will we admit how poor we are in the presence of God. And that admission of poverty is also because we are limited physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, socially, relationally, and spiritually. In short, when we admit we are poor in spirit, we open ourselves to the inflow of God's goodness, and we begin to experience and encounter the Trinity in our daily life. Hence, the kingdom of heaven begins to become and be a reality both here and hereafter. The second principle is blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And the greater our sacrifices and the greater the ungratefulness of those around us, the greater are our tears and our mourning. Also, when we hold on to whoever and whatever is of the world and of the flesh, we will mourn when we lose them. And so Jesus tells us today, we will be comforted, provided we keep holding on to the Trinity. So it's now up to us. Whom and what do we want to hold on to more and more daily? Let's move on to the third principle. Blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. Have you ever noticed that the meek go further in life, be it at workplaces and careers, or in other situations in our everyday life? Take note that their blessings last longer compared to most of those around us. And that's because amidst all the evil intentions and plans of those around them, they remain pleasing and focused on the Trinity. Therefore, they find favor with God, and His hand is actually upon them. And because of their faith and faithfulness, God will raise them up higher and faster eventually, and give them the desires of their heart. As we move on to principle number 4, about those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, Jesus says they shall be filled. Take note that those who are righteous are also God-fearing. They value how God sees them more than putting on an act to impress those around them. For such people, Jesus says they will receive and experience the fullness of life. And it is they who can differentiate right from wrong. It's they who are concerned about the common good of the community and the greater glory of God. And it's they who value justice and peace and what is rightfully due to even the least and the neglected of society. Because of their heart being like that of God, caring and concerned and valuing every soul as if they were a family member and as part of God's greater family, their heart touches God's heart and triggers the inflow and overflow of blessings to give them a fulfilled life of inner and outer satisfaction here and hereafter. Now, let's look at principle number 5 about the merciful, because Jesus says they too will receive mercy. Yes, friends, we need to forgive others, to be forgiven by God. We see it in the Lord's Prayer and in many other Bible verses, like what we hear in those verses, let's remember that we too have sinned and have hurt God's heart thousands of times all throughout our life. And yet God magnanimously and mercifully forgives us each and every time. So how is it then, after being forgiven thousands of times, we set limits on the number of times others can make mistakes or are allowed to hurt us? Let's remember, unforgiveness cuts our blessings, our healing, and keeps us in bondage. And that brings us to principle number 6. God is pure, and our inner worthiness and our accountability are being kept track by God. The more inwardly worthy we become in God's sight, the more we will have divine experiences and encounters and see and feel the presence and power and the goodness of God in our life. That's the symbolic meaning of seeing God present in our life for now. Of course, there will be some who will have true and real divine visions and manifestations and encounters, all depending on the percentage of the purity of our heart and our inner worthiness before God. So let's work on increasing our percentage of inner worthiness from today. As we move on to principle number 7 about the peacemakers being blessed and seen by God as His own children, let's check what are the words and actions that come out of us daily. Are we positive and life-giving? Do our words and actions bring peace and joy and harmony to others? Or are they creating pain and suffering and division and disunity? Are we bringing peace into people's lives or disharmony? Let's check and put it right, because when we become children of God, we become heirs of God's kingdom, and God's infinite riches will bring us manifold blessings. Last but not least, let's look at principle number 8, where Jesus says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Jesus is referring to those who put God first and remain righteous amidst all the challenges and negativity and opposition from others around them. Such difficulty may seem like persecutions, and Jesus was aware of it, and hence He asks us to remain focused not on the negative experiences, but on the rewards of the kingdom of heaven that await us both here and hereafter. Today, let's pause and review each of the 8 principles and ask ourselves which among them are part of our everyday faith life and spiritual journey. Take note, those 8 principles actually represent what Jesus lived and taught while He was on earth. Those 8 principles are partially a summary of Jesus' life, and He lived it, and He knows we too can do it too. That's why, besides teaching us the Beatitudes, He lived it as a human first, and therefore knows that we too can live it and make it a daily reality in our life. So today, for those who take up the challenge to do so, Jesus assures us manifold blessings. It's now up to us. Let's make time today and decide how much blessings do we want. Let's ponder how much we want our prayers to be answered. Let's ask ourselves and check, are we in need of a breakthrough miracle or inner and outer healing and deliverance? And if we want them all or any one of them, Jesus tells through the Beatitudes, it's all there and it's all ours. Choose, friends, which of the 8 pathways and principles we want to put into practice, and let's claim our share of the infinite blessings offered to us through the Beatitudes today and from today. Shall we say an amen to that and claim our blessings? And so be it in our life from today. Amen.